Good morning. It's very early in the morning, and the sun is just starting to crop up off in the distance. It's probably about 5:30, and I just wanted to show you what my campsite looks like from here right now. All of the mist coming off the lake. It's so very beautiful. This is what I get to wake up to. I am honored. It's traveling very fast. Good morning, you beautiful souls. As you can see, the sun is just starting to come up over there. Have a great day.
Hi everyone. So, day 3 of fasting and detoxing my body as well as camping and kind of my own spiritual retreat. On today's stop, I am at Canosa Falls. As you can see, this is kind of just the river before the falls. It's very beautiful. And so far has been one of my more favorite places to come. So let's head to the falls. So just a little ways down and we have this part here. So powerful. You know it's going to be a big waterfall when you see things like this. Although I've been here once before, I have never taken you guys here. Alright, let's continue on our journey here. Caution, steep cliffs. Supervise your children. In fact, the last time I came here was with my daughter and my partner. And yeah, you definitely want to supervise your children around these places. It brought up a lot of fear for me. Fear, I realize, is one of those things that everybody has. None of us are really sure why. I'm going to get into that a little bit later. Maybe not in this video, but I'm going to talk about what fear means and what it's all about. But for now, let's just enjoy all this beautiful scenery. Now, interestingly enough, it scares me to be up here. That's one of my fears. One of my biggest fears is heights. And I have braved it and come up here twice now. And I'm going to do it a second time for you guys. Because that's part of getting over all your hang-ups is facing your fears. So here we go. Here's my fear. All right, so as much as I would have loved to have stayed at the waterfall with you and record this video about fear, it was pretty impossible. When I did the editing of this video, after playing it, I realized that I was having technical difficulties. One being with me sticking my finger over the microphone off and on, and the other, the noise just of the waterfalls themselves was very loud. But then I was contending with the mighty wind, and the wind coming off a waterfall or funneling through that area was so intense that I just couldn't bear to even edit it all. And therefore, I'm sure you wouldn't have wanted to hear it either. So today we're going to touch base on fear. And I thought that it would be a great subject to touch base on while I was at that waterfall, specifically because I have a fear of heights and I have a fear of large rivers. So, fear is what we'll be discussing today. So, what is fear? Where does it come from? What different types of fear exist? And some of the things that you can do to help yourself overcome fear are going to be our topics. Now, first, before we get started on fear itself, I do want to touch base on emotions, because emotions obviously are what trigger our fear. Now, when you really strip all of the different words that we have to describe our emotions down to the very core, what you'll find is that there are only two different emotions, one being fear, the other one being love. Some would argue, and in fact somebody did argue with me about this, that there are more. And I just cannot resonate with that. Perhaps you resonate with that, and that's okay. But for me, when I really stripped down every single emotion, including the six that they put out, um, the other four still fell into either fear or love. They may be adverse from each other, polarity, one being of one being the other, in that six that they put out. However, it still just comes back down to fear and love. So anything that you would perceive in your life to be positive or enjoyable or bring you joy, then those would fall under the category of love. Anything that brings you happiness in your life falls under the category of love. Anything that you perceive to be negative or that hurts you, um, that would be under fear. Anything that elicits a response that is negative, that would be under fear. So, really, the polarity is simple. It boils down to the light and the dark. So, love and fear, yin and yang, right? So, everything really just comes down to these two things. That's why we have duality that exists within our reality currently. Now, that being said, fear itself, um, that is a tricky one to discuss because there are so many different types of fear. And I'll cover some of them. However, you may find that there are more than what I'm going to discuss here in this video. And indeed, there are. There's many different types of fear. Now, one of them is generational fear. And what does that mean? That means fear that has been passed down from generation to generation. It is not just human nature, but it is the nature of existing upon this planet to learn, observe, and pass down that knowledge from generation to generation, whether you're aware of it or not. Just look at any animal. They will actually observe, say, humans, for instance, and how we have treated them or almost made them extinct. And then what will they do? They will take this knowledge and it's encoded within their DNA. And they will not only teach their young to avoid, but it's also passed down through their DNA to avoid contact with humans and to be wary of humans. Well, the same rings true for us. We also have that ability. And if you look at instances, say, with the Native Americans or the Aboriginals in any country, the generational experiences that they've had that were based out of fear have actually written themselves within the DNA of their coding system. So when we are born into this life, we end up getting some of the DNA from our own parents. Although we are reincarnating or incarnating as a soul, the body and the experiences of our ancestors also comes in. So it creates another dynamic of fear within us. If that all makes sense with you, I will move on to the next. If you have any questions about that, I'd be happy to answer any of them because I know more about that. But essentially, you come in with these fears. So for me, when I asked, why am I scared of the water? Why am I scared of large bodies of water? I got a few answers. One being past life, another being the experiences that I've had on this planet that further reinforced the fear that I originally was born into. Now, what happens with that is you generally will encounter something that will surface this fear within you. So, if it is a past life fear, something that may be generational, or something maybe you've had an experience in a past life that that karma or that situation wasn't actually healed, and therefore you come across another situation in this current life. And what happens is it's happening at that time to surface your previous fear, your previous pain or experience in your other life, so that it can come up for healing. But what tends to happen is that we're unaware of that this is occurring um, on a soul level. And so what happens instead is it reinforces that fear to such an extent that we're completely stricken by fear being near a body of water or a river, um, and unable to process it. So instead of us seeing it as a gift, I guess, that something in our past is surfacing because perhaps we're unaware of it happening at the time, we get caught up in the trauma of the situation. And yeah, fair enough. Generally, a lot of those situations are extremely traumatic. For me, what reinforced it the first time was my ex husband getting swept down a very fast, deep, large river with extremely strong undertow. And he's very, very lucky to be alive today. We were in an area where my cell phone didn't work and I couldn't get to him. So, yeah, that reinforced the fear that I had previously had. Um, but I was incapable at the time when it happened of seeing that it had that experience had been shown to me so that I could overcome that fear. And instead, what I did was it reinforced it and I rode with it. So you can see how that can be a slippery slope. Now, again, it came up at a later point in my life where I got caught in a river and got swept down further. And that again, instead of me being able to see it as a gift, I saw it as a very close call. And after I was done processing it, just further reinforced my fear of water. Now, that is one way of seeing fear. Another way that I'm going to give you is essentially when we're little, and this is again with the past life fear or the generational fear. Interesting to note when you're little how fearless you are. Most children. Some children still retain the fear from past lives, and you'll notice that the most between 0 and 7, because they're the most connected to the spiritual realm at that age. But then you have the majority of people who are completely fearless as children. And for that group of people, what generally happens is somewhere around the age of 7, it could be just before or age 6, somewhere around there, sometimes as early as 5, but usually right before you finish that 7-year cycle, you have suddenly you develop fears that seem irrational and that nobody understands. Maybe it's a fear of spiders. Any of these types of fears that if you look back and you inquire as to when you develop these fears and you see that they're around that area, then that's a very good indication that there's something to do with past life. Now, if it's generational, that can be explained very easily by the experiences that your ancestors have had. So I bring up the Aboriginals and the Native Americans because that's a very obvious one. You know, we're all aware of their treatment and our ancestors' treatment of them. And although we today can say, you know, that is not us, that is not me, that pain is still there and it's undeniable. It's not only encoded within their DNA, but it has been passed down verbally, emotionally, as well as you can even say physically, because of the physiology changes within each generation and how they raise their young and teach them. It has been passed down in so many different ways. And that generational kind of fear and pain needs to be healed on more than just your soul level. It is possible, most definitely, but it does require a lot more work than just working with yourself. Now, let's actually talk about the fear that comes from living on this planet, because that's also a notable source of fear. We have been raised in a fear based society. All societies on this planet, for the most part, except for the ones that are in remote areas that, are their own civilizations where they're untouched, or there's not a lot of contact between the rest of the world and them. Those are different. They they definitely operate mostly on the basis of love and respect and mutual respect for everything. But for the majority of us, we have been raised in a fear based society, which only serves to feed that um, thought process of fear in itself. Then you have to take a look at how you were raised personally. Now, this is going to be individual for each person, because we all have our stories. We've all come from our own dynamic and type of family, and we're all our own individual people. So how we respond to our environments is going to be unique to each of us. So when you're looking to identify where your fear is coming from, you need to actually look at many different things. So, like the generational fear, the past life fear, as well as your environmental fear. So, that can be anything from your circle of friends, your family, the news. Obviously, that's a big fear generator, or TV in general, movies that you watch. What is influencing your fear, and when did you start allowing that influence to take hold? That's another important question to ask, because obviously, when we're young, we are sponges. So we just take in everything that is around us, and it's oblivious to us that that is what's occurring. But in fact, we are retaining this on a cellular memory level. So this starts to be the platform of everything else. But at some point, around the age of 7, we get to choose. We get to choose what we buy into and what we don't. Still less than we do as an adult and a youth, but more and more as every year passes, right? So when you want to actually go in and do the work and see where your fear started being your choice, essentially, what you started buying into, what story you started creating around fear, then it's important to ask not only the universe but your higher self to join you during these points, to ask and put out that question in a way that you're going to get a response. Because it's the same when I'm working with you guys, or with myself or with my guides. If I don't phrase the question correctly, then I may get no answer. So, how you phrase your questions to the universe when you're looking to do some deep soul work on yourself is going to determine the outcome. Now, I'm not saying that you can get or manipulate the outcome. What I'm saying is that you possibly won't get an answer at all, or you'll get that it's irrelevant or not relevant to whatever it is that you're seeking. And then what you'll soon discover is that you'll be going back in time to a certain point in your life maybe several, where you have actually given over some control to other people or circumstances and allowed fear to become ever present within you. And if this is the case, if you find yourself in that space, note the times and events that that has occurred, because that's important. That is kind of where the pattern itself has started or emerged from. So then when you find the pattern, that's when you can actually deconstruct the pattern, and that's when you can stop buying into the pattern, right? The pattern is a thought process. Now, fear is interesting because fear is obviously a process of the mind. It's a thought. It's one thought that circulates within your conscious mind. And while it's doing so, it can elicit so many different responses within not only your brain, but physiological responses. So when your inner child, and I say your inner child, gets triggered, what happens is, let's give you a situation here. I'm walking down the street and I encounter an old bully from school. Haven't seen them since I was a child. They're a completely different person, just like me. I'm an adult now, I've grown up. And yet, just seeing them has triggered a response within me of fear. The fear is within my mind at first. But if I actually allow that fear to move forward and out of my mind, so taking form as not only just a thought, but as a energy form, what happens is it's going to change my physiology. So where I was first just saying, oh, there's that person who used to bully me in school. Now it's, oh my gosh, there's that person who used to bully me in school. And then I start to sweat. And then my heart starts to beat faster. And I start to get scared that that person is going to come up and talk to me and say something mean to me. Now what's going on here is that my inner child suddenly is triggered. Then what happens is my outer child is going to take over, and I'm going to go into fight or flight. This is the physiological response where the thought now moves from the mind to the body because I perceive a threat over there. Now this might have been just dandy when we were living in prehistoric times, or when we still lived in the forest and I had to fight off cougars and bears. However, this is not the case anymore. And what happens is that I go into fight or flight and my hormones change. My adrenaline, so the adrenal gland, kicks in and pumps out tons of adrenaline, which is what's making my heart race faster and faster. When your heart races fast often, you go into this fight or flight often, or you feel stressed out often, you can have a heart attack. You only have a certain amount of beats in your heart in your lifetime in this physical body. And if you don't take care of that, and you don't keep it on the level and keep calm, learn how to regulate your systems and get the tools that you need to cope, then you're actually using up all those beats in your heart to be stressed out for something that may not be anything at all. So not only is it creating this physiological response, where your adrenaline's kicking up, it's making you feel powerful. Like you either need to fight this person with words, our society, or you need to just take off and run. And like I said, the fight or flight process is not good or healthy for your body. It's good for survival cases. If you were actually getting attacked by somebody, then that's when you want it to kick in. But in these kinds of situations, the fear starts to control your body. Once you allow that thought to leave your mind and go into your body, and you don't put a stop to it before that happens, then you're no longer in control. Simply put, when your adrenal gland kicks in and all of that adrenaline starts pumping through you, you're no longer in control. That's a natural response for your mind to really, it doesn't shut off, but the adrenaline kicks it up to such a degree that you're able to maneuver through different avenues that weren't accessible before, which is why a lot of high performers think that it's an asset to, go into fight or flight. But what it actually does is it not only affects your heart, it affects all of your internal organs. It creates excess body weight. It creates mental afflictions like depression and anxiety. Go figure, more anxiety. It creates so many negative responses for your body over the long term, which is why it's so important to address your fear and address your stress levels. So, I diverge a little from the topic. However, now that's one example of the fear and how it affects your body. Now let's just get down to some of the things that you can recognize and how to overcome. Fear, because there are so many different types of fears and our experiences are so vastly different from one another, you really have to evaluate every aspect of those fears and where they came from, what are they. If you need to ask questions to the universe and your higher self, then do so. If you're not getting any answers, then maybe you're not listening or being open enough to those answers, because they can come in so many different formats and through so many avenues, because the universe sees so many possibilities that we are just incapable of seeing. Sometimes it's through somebody at the bus stop. You could be sitting there waiting for the bus and somebody is there with an answer for you in a short little conversation. Be open to receiving the messages from the universe, especially if you live in a big place, a big city where it's common that people don't look each other in the eyes, people don't talk to each other or say hello. Be open with an open heart and the messages will come. Now, I talk about the inner and outer child, and the inner child is, of course, the one who has experienced all this pain in this lifetime, not in a previous lifetime or anything else, because we've already discussed how that works. In this lifetime, your inner child can perceive pain not only just from the standpoint of between the ages of 0 and 7, but in your youth and in your adult life, you're still experiencing pain and trauma. However, the difference is that that inner child never grew past a certain level. So this is what we call developmental trauma. If you experience traumatic events in your childhood between the ages of 0 and 7, those will stop you from evolving and growing emotionally into an adult. So this is where your inner child still stays an inner child within you. Even though you are in the body of an adult, your inner child is still just a child, because she or he may not have overcome the traumatic events that created that fear to begin with. Then they will never be able to overcome that as an adult unless you treat them in a way that creates
security. So address the fears with your inner child and create safe environments for you and your inner child. So, however you see fit, because I can't necessarily say what's going to work for you or for me, unless, of course, I'm talking to your higher self directly. But for me, a safe environment might look like my previous video, what I was talking about with my Papa's On cushion that's really fuzzy, and some fuzzy blankets, and pillows with different textures. That might be a safe environment for me. Playing some really soft music, or just singing to myself. The shower, that's also a safe environment for me. Something about rain and showers, just, it's a very soothing experience for me. So whatever safe environment you can create. Other people need to make a womb because they experienced um, traumatic or trauma before they were even born. And for some people, they haven't experienced that trauma before they were born. However, a womb signifies that eternal love. So, whatever is going to work for you, find it. Find it before you do your work with your inner child, especially when it comes to fear. This will allow not only you and your physical being and your body to feel safe before you start working with your inner child, but it'll also give you that intimate space to talk to your inner child. And now that might sound crazy. What am I supposed to do? Just sit there and talk to my inner child? Yeah, it's that easy. We all like to make it sound really complicated and like it should be super hard, but really you're having an inner dialogue. So what's going on here is that you're going to find your comforts, and you're going to find that space of security, and make sure that it's quiet at first so that you can hear what responses are coming up from your inner child. For me, when I do it, I like to just pose a question. Or, well, at first I start by telling my inner child that I'm there with them and that I'm not going anywhere and that I love her. And then before we start getting into the trauma itself, I let her know that she is safe and secure. And I imagine, like, I actually think that I'm hugging her. Maybe I hug a pillow, for instance. And it gives me the feeling like I am hugging her. And if that's what it takes, then do that. Do whatever it takes to give you that idea or that feeling. If you're a feeling person, like I am, I'm very textile. Do whatever it is. If you're really, really good at visualizing, then just visualize it. And then from there, I'm just going to find a moment in my life where that fear started. And that is the earlier part of my life. So I'm not talking about the generational fear or the past life fear. That requires a different type of method than this. This is fear that's been established in this lifetime, and that has created a pattern that continues throughout your life and continues to cycle, whether you're aware of it or not. So then what I like to do is I will bring up that incident with my inner child. And I'll go back to that moment in time where the fear first started, or where I think it first started. And I'll let her know that we're going to process this moment together and in a safe environment that is of love and only love. And I ensure her continuously while we're doing this that I am there with her, and that I'm hugging her and holding her, and that she's okay. And I'm feeding her whatever words of reassurance, love, and comfort and security that she needs to hear. And I'm listening. I'm listening for the responses. So if I pose a question to her, like, how did this make you feel when this happened? I allow my mind to be still. And by allowing my mind to be still, it opens the pathway for a response to come in. Now, you might think that you're just making it up, but in fact, if you just allow the opportunity for your inner child to speak to you, they will. So, whatever comes to your mind at first, the first response that you hear is in fact what your inner child has been crying out to tell you. So, listen, because it'll be a very valuable piece of information and a valuable experience to be able to learn how to create a dialogue with your inner child. That's how you know what they really need and how they felt. And then by that, you learn how to heal it together. Because whatever they tell you, how it made them feel, or what they need, is going to actually give you the toolkit to better reassure them and create security and comfort with them, and which creates healing. Now, I'm not saying that doing this one time with your inner child is going to heal it. This is an ongoing process until your inner child feels safe and secure about that situation. You can't move on. Now, I'm not saying that you can't move on ever. You can do different ones. You know, if you're tired of working on that one for a while, sometimes you just need to let it sit. And by doing so, you're letting yourself take in everything that has just occurred. And you're allowing your inner child to do so. But don't forget about your inner child. Make sure that you keep that love and security in the dialogue. So maybe you go a few days without wanting to work on that because it was painful. And it's painful for him or her as well. Just make sure that you take some time every day to reassure them and comfort them and love them, that inner child that is. Every day, even if it's just 5 or 10 minutes, or twice a day, be like when you wake up, look in the mirror, or when you go to bed, look in the mirror, or do it twice a day, like I said. And then go back to it when you feel ready again. Now, what you'll find is that when you do this, you're more than likely not going to get that feeling at the end. What's going to happen is that you're going to be jolted into not wanting to do that again. But why is this happening? Because the fear itself creates such a resistance, and your inner child is so untrusting that you are safe because you've abandoned them for so long, that this is going to create resistance, and your being is essentially going to want to create polarity between the two again, because that's what you know, that's what's safe. And until you can build up your inner child a little, you're just going to keep pushing away from, it's like opposite magnets, right? You're pushing away from each other. It's really hard to get them together. But if you just flip one around, they stick. That's kind of the same. If you use that analogy to think about your inner child and yourself, well, eventually what happens is that you work enough with your inner child that they do start to trust you, and you start to move closer, and you start to develop that trust and that bond and a platform to stand on that is safe and secure and strong. And eventually you meet face to face and you look in each other's eyes and you go, wow, we've done this together, and you can be proud. You can elevate yourselves from there. That is a stepping stone. It is the first step to the next step, which is the rest of your lives, repairing yourself. And then eventually what happens is she turns around and you stick, right? So that's integrating your shadow sides into your being. Well, one of the most important elements of that is your inner child. There are many other parts of your shadow that need to be integrated too to become one with yourself, but this is the first step and the most necessary step to take. in order to transcend fear and basically all of your pain. Now, when I refer to the outer child is essentially the one who is going to take over. Anytime your inner child gets triggered by fear or pain, they're going to turn inward and, huddle up in a corner and start crying, and your outer child's going to get mad. They're going to elicit a response. And that response is the fight or flight within your body. So that is their survival. So they actually will act out. Your outer child will act out in ways to sabotage you or to trigger you in ways, your body in ways, so that you want to do that fight or flight. You want to survive. You want to do whatever is necessary to keep you kind of in the same safety net, is what it is. So that is probably your biggest thing to look at. Find that place of comfort. Find what soothes you. Create that connection with your inner child. Now, I'm going to do a part 2 to this, and this is going to refer more to the past life healing, and I will do another video on generational healing. But in this one, I kind of just want to touch base on fear itself and the types of fear and what you can do to help yourself in this current state. All right, so I hope you enjoyed that video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Share it with as many people as you like, of course, because this content is free. I love sharing. Hope you do too. And if you're interested in booking a session with me, please check me out on my website at stormbydesignintuitive.com. You can also friend me on Facebook. I'm at Storm by Design. And if you want to subscribe to my blog posts, I will be getting back to those very soon. That is also on my website. So I did do a free, every month I do a free posting for a reading. And this last month I haven't done a draw yet because I'm waiting for some stories and things to come in from people. So if you haven't seen my last video, that is essentially about my Saturn return and my 7-year cycle wrap up. Please check that one out. I will be doing a draw for a free winner of a soul tapping session. I do think I'll pull 2 names as well as 2 for healing sessions. So that may be intuitive Reiki, or it may be energy clearing, or some of the other ones that I do. I'm not too sure what. I might even give a choice depending on the person, and it'll be based off of the comments that are left under that video or in the discussion area. Other than that, I just want to say thanks. Love you all. And as we head into winter, at least where I live, 6 months of winter, I hope that you get a few moments as time kind of, slows down now for the seasons of change and fall and winter, to reflect a little more on this past year for you and what it's brought you and who it's brought you. And most importantly, how much you have evolved in the last year and how much love and joy you have brought into your life. And if there's not a lot, then I think we'll start discussing why that is. Maybe not why, but how to change that. So look for that video upcoming. That will be on manifesting. All right. Have a great day, guys. Bye.